everyone. This is Pat Foley with recruitinginfo.com. We're continuing our interview series with people throughout the world of youth sports about recruiting, college recruiting during the COVID-19 crisis, and trying to get a sense of what the impact is going to be on the college recruiting process. I've spoken to maybe 10 or a dozen people so far in this process, and my next guest really is probably the most deep background or most impressive background of anyone that I've come across yet. So Ruth Nelson is the former head coach of George Williams College, former head coach of University of Houston, former head coach of LSU, and former head coach of University of Iowa in volleyball. So, and there were more awards than I could name. The AVCA Hall of Fame. She's a Hall of Famer athlete herself. Just a tremendous background, and really, I'm excited to speak to Ruth because I think she's very, very knowledgeable about the world of recruiting, having been on both sides. So welcome.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. I appreciate it, Pat. This is going to be fun
because
not very often do I get to talk to someone like you on the recruiting. It's usually me talking to the college coach, trying to get some of the players that I train, or maybe even a kid that needs help that I can at least direct them and where to get the information. Not that it's almost nearly impossible, as you know, to learn all the rules. You need to be a lawyer to do that. Yeah. But, it's like they say, knowledge is power. So if you can direct kids and parents to the places to find the information, then to me, that's 100% of the problem.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about actually what you're doing now, because I know that you train a number of children, and you also are a consultant on the recruiting side of things. And why don't you talk a little bit about what you're up to these days?
Well, I'll tell you what. I started training on Skype in 1995 when most people didn't even know what it was. And I trained some physical training. I have my own aquatic training in the pool that I was training some players. They put up their computer and they work out. And I started doing that a long time ago. And then now I can tell you, this is my 53rd Zoom since March 8th. But my normal, before March 8th happened, it was kind of interesting, is I usually spend Mondays with ages 5 through 10 with kids and their parents in Bring Your Own Parent program, which is, for some of the viewers or listeners, that's 2028 recruits and 2032 recruits. So some people always laugh at me when I put up a sign that says 2028 all-around player, and everybody laughed. They go, Ruth, seriously? I said, no. I've had 2013 and now they're graduated and they're playing professionally. So that's kind of what I do on Mondays. And then on Fridays and Sundays, I train high school and middle school athletes. And when summer rolls around, which this summer is going to be very different, I usually train college players, the players that I've trained that went on to college, they come back during the summertime. I train those players, and also players that have gone on to play professionally overseas. And now they're back. Yeah.
What are you hearing right now in the world of volleyball? Because it's been interesting to talk to people all around the country in different sports, and it varies everywhere. But what are you hearing in terms of kids being able to get back and play again?
Well, right now it's all the players that I have Zoom meetings with, which are ones that you're looking at behind me in my virtual background. On Fridays and Sundays, I brought in 17 speakers that were going to address different issues. And the reason why I chose to do that and not training is because each of those high school players are doing things for their high school coach. They're doing things for their club coach. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't my responsibility to really keep them in shape, but I felt like I could help them mentally, emotionally, and help them with the recruiting process. Because of, first they started with volleyball, was dead period, May, 15th, then the 30th, now it's June, now it's the end of June. So it was almost like it was up and down for them. So I thought, what could I do with people that I know that I could bring in as speakers? So I brought in someone in a recruiting service. I brought in 5 Olympic athletes. I brought in players that are collegiate players right now. I brought in players that were players for me, that played with them, that mentored with them, that are now in professional jobs. And what I've tried to do is, and plus I've been on a ton of Zoom calls with high school coaches throughout the country. I do a lot of Zoom calls with high school coaches. And I'm also on listening to what the ADs are doing. Plus we have master coaches weekly buzz where we interview people once a week. And it's former USC coach Mick Haley, Brian Gimolero from Long Beach State, and Bob Bertucci, Sacred Heart. So we keep in touch with whoever is really addressing these issues. And what are those things? From Kathy DeBoer with the AVCA to John Speraw with UCLA, with Dave Soji with the new Women's Professional League coming out, with Cecile Renaud, who just came on this last week. And then we have an interview with Jenny Hahn with JVA. And I think that what we've done, and it's helped me stay abreast of everything, is what is it that we can do with players right now. And Texas and Georgia they're a little bit more ahead because they were already called to action, and kids already started doing beach volleyball 2 weeks ago in Texas.
Wow.
They already started doing one-on-ones and one-on-twos this last Monday. And June 1st, they can have group training, and June 15th, they can go in competition. But yet the national tournament was scheduled at the end of June in Dallas. They canceled that.
Sure.
So a lot of this doesn't make sense to me, Pat, because, you know, everybody's like, I know Michigan's closed, you know, I've got people in Chicago. So I do a lot of talking with a lot of Division I coaches, and, you know, they're allowed now to come back as of June 1st to do some. So everybody's speculating. And as you know, we're in America, and this is American football. Mm-hmm. So what is it that football's going to do? You know, is what brings football to the campus? Right. Students. So it's almost like you can read in the Austin paper that says we're not going to have football at Texas, but yet the governor says everybody's going back to college. Right. So what I feel my position is that I can assist in a lot of different ways is not provide the kids with all the information, because they're 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old kids. Mm-hmm. So I try to provide that information to the parents. Right. And keep the players focused on one common thread. How do I stay positive? How do I stay not stressed? How do I maintain my grades online when I don't like online learning? Mm-hmm. Well, how do I prepare? Is the club season on? Is it off? Every time a kid gets an email every week, it's on, then it's off, then it's on, then it's off.
What's your usual season? What's the normal season?
Well, volleyball club in Texas has become all year round.
Yeah, yeah.
And I definitely think athletes should be multi-sport. I did an interview on Coaching Wizards in 2013 saying you cannot specialize in sport, and you cannot specialize within the sport. Right. Because you must be able to learn the game. And my true belief is this, that how you develop a love and passion for the sport is by understanding the game. And how do you understand it? Is if you're healthy. How do you stay healthy? Is using those muscles that you have in different sports. Absolutely. And, you know, I go against the grain, and somebody says, oh, Ruth, you're old fashioned. I go, well, then I'm proud to be old fashioned.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's better for the athlete. They need a break from the same routine over and over on, you know, on the body.
Oh, absolutely. That's correct.
What are you seeing in terms of the recruiting process? So it kind of varies from sport to sport. Sometimes the rules are a little different. I know, you know, lacrosse, which my girls are heavily involved in. Your year tends to be the big commitment year, but they're seeing that might get pushed back into senior year. How does it work in volleyball, and what's changed?
Well, when they changed the rules, June 15th, sophomore. Okay. So you've got a sophomore that was calling college coaches, and all of a sudden now they can't talk to them. Mm-hmm. Now the qualifiers are the biggest recruiting events. Okay. They were all canceled after March 15th.
Yeah.
So 6 qualifiers plus the national tournament that was going to be held here. So all of those sophomores, all of those freshmen, all of those juniors that were uncommitted,
Right.
now all of a sudden are sending videos.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing their videotapes. The problem is a lot of them might not have videotaped because they were waiting for the qualifiers to really, when they were playing pretty good. But we're suggesting, and this is what I've always done, and that is, there's certain grade level that you can call the coaches. Okay. June you can. It doesn't matter whether it's a dead period now or not. You can call, you just can't go on campus.
Okay.
So it's really changed the perspective for a sophomore. Okay. So June 15th, this is what I feel will happen. June 15th will happen. And now kids as sophomores going to be juniors have not been seen in any qualifiers. They've been seen at the beginning of the year in January and February because they played tournaments January, February, in the first 2 weeks of March. Now, all of a sudden, college coaches are going to say, I'm going to commit to this kid because I may lose him.
Unseen, huh?
Yeah. Well, not unseen January, February, March, and they've seen him when they were a freshman, but not as much if they would have seen him in 5 qualifiers plus nationals.
Right.
But I think it's going to be more of a rush to the table. Or it could be the reverse. Okay, who's to say there's going to be college volleyball this fall? Who's to say they're not going to move high school volleyball to spring? And if you do that, you've got spring volleyball, spring club, men's and women's basketball, all during springtime using the same facilities in most cases.
Good point. Yeah.
So,
I mean, it is, everything is being compressed, and I do think it's going to be really difficult to get gym space. It's a huge struggle for our program to get gym space for our basketball program, and you're right. There's going to be a scramble for gym time.
I just read, because I'm, of course, I'm quite a bit on social media, and everyone says, "Oh, but you're really good, Ruth." And I said, "Oh, you're saying I'm really good for my age?" You never, I still think I'm 50, But I think the thing is, by listening, it's like they're saying, if you can't spread out kids in high school in the classroom, let's use the gym. Wait a minute.
Right.
You're using the gym? That means no physical education classes.
Right.
So the interesting thing is during this whole time, everybody's thinking, okay, nationals at the end of June, how are we going to keep the kids in shape? Well, hey, the first month, the kids thought they were on vacation. Do you think they want to do anything? And I know some high schools just started Zoom calling just now.
Wow.
Now, I've done 20 now with these guys, and basically I can tell you that from talking with them and their parents, they feel much more relaxed. They feel better prepared to handle whenever it is they go back. And to have people and almost all the people I had come on, I have a common bond, and that is keep your schedule, stay healthy. This is probably the only time in your career you'll ever have this much time off to heal, which you and I know kids won't take time off because they feel the pressure, because they feel that somebody's going to get ahead of them. And you and I know there is not 10,000 scholarships in every sport.
Right. Yeah.
And when you really think about it, a lot of kids go to private school. That's 10 grand. They play club volleyball here in Dallas, first team. That's another 8 grand. That's $18,000 a year. Okay. Now what happens? Parents have lost their jobs. Do you think they're going to be able to pay for club? No. So what does that do for club? Dues go up. Now kids can't afford it. So my prediction, this is my personal prediction, is that you're going to see more kids playing recreational. Not recreational in the sense that just throw the ball up, but in a recreational league, because you're not going to be able to afford if the club fees go up. No matter, I've got one 9-year-old that pays $4,200 for a second team.
Yeah.
9 years old.
That's the space that we're in, the rec league that I'm with. And that has always been a focus of ours, is how do we deliver something close to the club experience, but for hundreds of dollars instead of thousands of dollars? Because there is a huge bifurcation in America now of along socioeconomic lines of who can access sports. It's becoming more and more wealthy children or children from wealthy families are able to access the club sports, I think it's really important that rec still exists and provides an alternative, because it is less and less now. I mean, there's definitely a financial line between the haves and the have-nots in sports.
Well, I do think that I've always believed that recreation, and I've had a friend of mine used to be in Baltimore and used to be in charge of recreation, and Joe Sharpless, and he always used to talk about the things that you provide. And it's almost like Dave Brizio, who's done my podcast, he said during this time, there's a place for everything, but I think rec can't be club. You don't want rec to be club. Right. You don't want club to be rec. But in reality, if you have 7 teams at the same age group and club, you don't, I mean, that's still a lot of money to be paying. And you shouldn't be paying to play. You should be paying to get trained. Mm-hmm. And I think recreation, okay, I only am dealing specifically with volleyball, because that's one of the reasons why I developed Bring Your Own Parent. And that was that I train kids. I'm actually training a 4-year-old right now. I train her for 15 minutes a week. Her daddy is a high school coach, and I've mentored him for 20 years. And I have a program at Lovejoy High School. And they have, it basically is this: parents must come with the kids. Parents must participate. They engage, but they do not answer the questions. They don't direct the drills. They follow the kid's lead. So if I say, put your hands, wrist, thumbs, hands, the kid goes to the parent and shows them how to do it. It's not a discussion with the parents. It's all about the kids. So what's happening is, and we had this podcast that we have, like 8 series podcasts, and it talks about how the parents feel that the kids are getting life lessons, exercise. Think of what you did in physical education in the elementary school. You did jump rope. You did movement skills. They apply to all sports. So what we're doing is, and I find that a lot of kids stay in BYOP even if they play in rec or they play in club, because they're getting, we don't compete. We only train skills and movement skills and volleyball. And now I've added a little bit because I've seen the need for kids learning the game, because they might go to rec, and guess what? We know in recreational anything, the majority of coaches are parents. Mm-hmm. Danielle Scott, 5-time Olympian. She has a daughter that's, 10 years old. And she called me, she goes, Ruth, I've got to coach the soccer team today. The soccer coach can't be there. They asked me to do it. I said, Danielle, I'm going to tell you what, no, she says, no, you need to tell me because you coach soccer in college. And I said, Google it. Google, do some drills.
I got into this. I volunteered to be a pre-K soccer coach, and I didn't know a thing about pre-K soccer. I mean, I don't know anything about, still don't know anything about soccer, but just herding the cats around the field. So,
well, it's interesting. 60% of the parents that are in my BYOP end up coaching rec. 60%. Wow. So just think of this. They now have learned the 4 basic skills of volleyball. So they are much more educated. I mean, I have 2 online courses they can take. It's like $10 to get, to learn the 4 basic fundamental skills. But the way I feel this happens, and the one thing I was telling you, the reason why BYOP, all of the high school kids and middle school kids mentor the younger ones. That is paying it forward. Because if they're going to train with me, they must mentor. Otherwise, I'm not going to train them. They must mentor. Awesome. And they mentor 1 hour to 1 hour. They train with me for an hour. They mentor for an hour. That's so great. It's a 1-to-1 trade-off. And what it's doing is it's giving them more responsibility. Now, one of the other things that they're learning is they introduce every speaker that comes on. They also come up with a quote on their virtual background, explain why. They also come up with a short video that of something they did this week for their club coach or their high school coach. Because, the demands are, each one has different demands. Sure. So for me, in the recruiting, we basically have laid out a website that's secure that I lay out 3 to 4 categories. One is motivational. One is the physical side. You know, what can they be doing that maybe their club or high school coach might be having them doing? What are 5 basic exercises they could do every day? Not giving them a huge workout. However, some of them do work out in the pool. They do some jump in the MVP shuttle machine. But then they also have one on the psychological, and then how women are in sports. What are motivational things? Then they have a site where they're having a jump rope challenge between them of doing double unders of how many they can do in a minute. And then they'll get, you know, some type of discount or something on something that we're doing. But I think the thing is with them, I've initiated them to start talking about who are their schools. Do they have their 40 or 50 schools? Up until this point, I had been dealing the majority of time with the parent. But because I guarantee in 17 weeks, you're going to be thinking about, why didn't I do this, 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 and this? Why didn't I call this college? Why didn't I email? Why didn't I send a short little 30-second video clip? So all of those things. So I'm kind of what I consider a bridge between the club and the high school, because each of them are doing certain aspects. And I call this a resource team. No high school coach, no club coach is responsible for getting a kid a scholarship. They're on a resource team that should include also the counselor, relatives, dad and mom, cousins, club, physical trainer, performance trainer, maybe a rehab person, maybe a therapist, because a lot of kids are going to therapy. You know, a lot of kids can't handle the stress. So when you have a resource team, Pat, you realize that means that I have to assign each of those people a certain thing that I want them to help me do. So let's say club. They can say, John, this is my list of schools, and these are the schools and why I've selected them. However, the parent is looked at on USA News and they've said, okay, these are the top 30 schools in the country in physical therapy. These are the ones I want my daughter to go to. And I said, okay, first of all, do you really need a scholarship to go to school? If your kid needs a scholarship, then we need to tweak this list, because she might go there and play, but she might not get a scholarship, but she might get a full academic there.
Right.
But that money runs out, and now it's going to be even less, because all of the people who donate to these colleges, they don't have the discretionary money that they had before. So it brings up a new issue of what you've talked about, is how does this affect specifically kids and the scholarship? Hey, let's say that some of the schools are going to have to drop some of the numbers in scholarships. Okay, now that doesn't mean, okay, at a D1 school for volleyball, it's 12 full rides are available.
Okay.
It does not mean that all schools give 12 full rides. They might give 12 partials.
Got it.
And the reason is this is the amount of money I give you, volleyball blank university. I give you $200,000. You can use it how you want. Maybe you give 3 full scholarships and maybe the last 9, but most people don't have 12 to be able to give, because now you're talking about less money, and you're not talking so much of the Power 5 schools, you know, the big 5 conferences. You're talking about a lot of, hey, St. Edward's dropped 6 sports at the end of March. 6 sports. Whoa. They were the first one that came out of the box and dropped 6 sports. And it was interesting because all of a sudden everybody peaked up, and then all of a sudden you have a petition because some D1 schools wanted to drop below the 16 minimum sports to stay in D1. Well, the petition went around, which was the Players Coalition, which was started by, as you know, you were probably involved in all of that. And they said, no, you can't do that. But that doesn't mean it's going to end there, because now the bottom line is this: football plays because students are there. Right. So now they put it off on, if the students are back in school, then you can have your sports. But now if there's no students, you know, are you going to have it? And so now they said football, women's basketball, men's basketball, they can come back and do some voluntary training. Well, you know what voluntary training means. We all know what voluntary training means. It means you better be doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But
that kind of gives you an overview. And I think of, you know, kind of what's happening. I think that you just listen, and I listened only to CNN. I can miss it for 3 days, and all of a sudden I go, man, you're not going to believe it. I told my hairdresser, I said, hey, I'll fly to Atlanta so you can cut my hair. I'm just, it's hard to stay up in every single state of what's going on.
Yeah.
Because even different counties, like I have a friend in California, and she went down to LA, and, that was the day that they opened up Santa Monica Beach, 100,000 people. And, 48 hours later, they closed it. So, and now you say, do you believe in, so you got to decide on what you believe in. But for me, I have always been a believer that things will happen the way they're going to happen. And there's always a higher power and someone that's directing all this. And all I can do is, with the kids that I'm around and the ones that I talk to in school, is continue to make the best grades you can, stay healthy, and you will have fun. But you can't have fun if you don't have the grades, because your parents aren't going to let you get out of that. If you're in college, that means you're not going to play anymore. Right. And how do you have fun? You stay healthy. And the problem is, if anything else, hey, listen, things happen for a reason. And somebody says, Ruth, you really believe that? And I say, absolutely, I do that. I said, when in anybody's lifetime would these kids have ever had a break? Because they would have never been given a break, or they would not have felt like they could take a break.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we couldn't believe how much extra time we seemed to have on our hands, because all of a sudden we weren't going to lacrosse camps and going to, one thing I said early on in this is we probably never had as many, we never had as many family dinners as we did shutdown. So you can look at, there are ways to take positives from any situation.
Well, I can tell you, it takes me more preparation to do online training. I can go on the court and I can adjust a kid that maybe doesn't like to listen to their parent. Right. But one day I even had to call a kid out, and I don't like to do that. And the kid, I says, hey, you can't go over to your neighbors and play. We're in an online course. But then you know what? It's up to the parent. And you know what? I'll tell you what, some of the parents have said to me, Ruth, we appreciate the fact is that you've stayed with your same days that you normally train, and you stayed within the same time frame. And I said, you can't take kids out of a schedule. Right. And I said, you can't sleep in at 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. You've done that for the first 2 to 3 weeks. Hey, if you want to sleep in on Saturday or Sunday, you go right ahead. But you better get up and you better work out at least, because to me, getting back, whether it's June, July, August, kids always wait to the last minute to get in shape to go to college. I think this has pushed kids to stay in shape, or it's pushed them to say that, oh, I got a longer vacation. And, you're going to get, it's like, I listened to April Ross the other day, the beach volleyball Olympian, and she made a comment, and she said, I guess the guy asked her, what do you think motivates you? And who motivates you? And she goes, I don't need to be motivated to know what I need to do. Think of that. I need to be in shape. I need to do it. No one needs to motivate me to do that. Right. But that's taking it, at a personal level. And I think these kids that are out there now trying to figure out what's the next step, I think they need to live one day at a time. And for me, you learn that because, when you're young at 21 and you're head coaching in a college, which I started coaching at age 21, you're planning your future out. But when you get past 50, you're going to say, you look around, boy, a lot of your friends aren't here. You say, you better learn to see what you can do one day at a time. So I figured that if I could transfer that knowledge to the players that I train, to be able to take each Olympian from, that they've listened to, or each performance trainer, or each person who had stress during their college season and how they dealt with it. And how do they compare COVID-19 timeout? That's what I call it. How do they compare that to being stressed? And the fact is, if you don't appreciate your parents give up so much for you to play youth sports.
Mhm.
That's really, now the question is, does everybody sit back and reevaluate what youth sports needs to be to each individual person? It cannot be the same for everybody.
Right.
And it's like what most kids say, I want to be with my friends and I want to have fun.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of my players said one time, she goes, she's a sophomore in a great academic school. And she goes, well, Ruth, I don't like to coach. I don't like this. I said, then would you like to do what I did? And I had to work 20 hours a week and pay for my education. It took me 10 years to pay it back. Or would you try to figure out a way why you love this sport and save your parents almost $400,000?
Mm-hmm.
Very simple. I mean, you got to figure out. It's like a kid comes back and says to me, Ruth, I says, don't start on what you think your high school coach should be doing. You better figure out how you can work with every coach you have, no matter what differences. It's just like when a kid gets turned down in college, they said they're not interested in me. I said, okay, fine. Did you tell someone you weren't interested in them? Well, yeah, I did say that. I said, well, how do you think they felt? They just moved on. You can't, now you can take into consideration of why they said no. And if they said because they only had one scholarship and you were number 3, guess what? I guarantee that number 1 was probably number 1 for 10 other schools. So guess what? There are plenty of other schools to look at. So you've always got to figure out how to turn something into a positive. It's like, Pat, you and I are, you're at the age that you're going to surround yourself with people that are positive.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell the kids all the time, well, someone's negative. I said, keep being positive. Kill them with kindness. Well, no, they don't. I said, then guess what? Don't worry about it. Just keep doing what you're doing, because kids are too easily influenced by their peers, more so than now. When you look at this age group is, you have to drugs, alcohol, sex, all the list of things that when I was in high school, you were exposed to 1 or 2, but usually not until your senior year. Now they're exposed to these in 7th and 8th grade. So if they don't have positive influence around them, and it's like, kind of like selecting your own team, right? Don't you, when you select a team, don't you want to select all the people that are going to be positive, not ones that aren't going to challenge you? Yes, you're going to pick them, but you want positive people. And I say this, players are an extension of their parents. I don't care how you put if, and, but, they are an extension. Now, whether they're fully 100% or not, they are an extension. So, I mean, my words to parents would be is, if you can't be positive about a situation, why would you expect your kids to be positive? And why would they be good teammates?
Sure. Yep. Well, that's what I love about youth sports is that influence, that positive influence that it has on kids, and the statistics bear it out that all outcomes are enhanced by participation in sports, and it is the right kind of influences that you want your children to have, that you find in sports, and great coaches and great teammates, and it has a huge impact on kids.
I do believe that it's funny. A friend of mine who used to be the CEO of USA Volleyball, he used to say, Ruth, do you feel that your BYOP parents are the next generation coaches? And I said, I believe they're probably up to age 12, because most of them probably wouldn't feel comfortable to go beyond, but they will have gone through more than any other coach, because I went through 4 years of college, well, 3.5, I graduated early, went to graduate school, got my master's degree in physical education psychology with an emphasis in coaching and secondary education with anatomy, biomechanics. I was my own sports performance trainer for 14 of the 16 years. So my point is that parents can challenge coaches in a sense that coaches need to become more educated and more involved in becoming better coaches, because I still learn something every single day. I just did an hour live show that was 122 people stayed on the entire time, and it's already gotten 7,000 views. And it was an 8-year-old helping me all with all these skills. And I had only trained her twice on the court. And people said, how long you been training her, Ruth? A couple of years? And I said, no, 2 times on the court. And I said, the rest have been on virtual. But I think what happens is that coaches must become better people, and they must feel open when parents challenge, but parents can't degrade the coaches, nor the coaches can do the same. But you know what happens? When you've got someone who hasn't had my background, my generation came up, you had to have a degree and you had a master's degree, and most people were getting doctorate degrees in teaching. You got to understand where that coach, because a parent may come to me and say, yeah, but Ruth, you know what? They don't do what you do. And I said, they're not a teacher. Why would you expect that coach to have my knowledge? Now, I expect that coach to want to become better educated. And it can't be that you watch a video on the internet and think that that's the only way to do something. You have to test things out. I mean, I had the luxury of being trained by an Olympic coach, Jim Coleman, then by Mary Jo Pepler, who was the first women's superstar and played in the '64 Olympics, Marilyn McCreevy. Ari Solinger had an exercise degree in exercise physiology, was the Olympic coach. I was in Japan, you know, every single country in the world. I surrounded myself with the best coaches in the world, because my level of what I thought was to be the best I could be was at a much higher level than some. They might just want to be the state champion in high school. Well, that's okay. But you still need to learn with people that have been exposed to people that have trained higher level. See, I think what happens is, you know, Pat, you talk to how long you been in coaching?
I don't know, 10, 15 years now. I'm just an
okay.
I'm not a coach.
So let's take 2 people that's been in 10 years or not. And I said to him, I said, okay, you're this person, here's the other counterpart, 10 years equal. All right, what makes one better than the other? Not because Pat won 10 state championships and Sally won 5. Pat's in a smaller school. He has players that play all year round. So it's like when you look at people, you can't compare apples to oranges. You have to compare apples to apples. So when parents look for coaches, you know, and I think this is what's happened in the junior side. Right now, you're seeing it happening because they were registered with a club. Okay, not like basketball where you can register with more than one club. Volleyball, you cannot until you get a release or you end that year with that club, and then you can sign a new to go to another club. Now AAU has nothing, they have their own rules. Recreation has their own rules. But what's happening is you have no recruiting when you're with another team. You're not supposed to be recruiting kids. They have rules now. It's like it's college all over. So the point is, since when did a player become a property? You know, and it's almost like everybody's marketing and they're always looking. It's like, I remember last year's nationals, kids were doing clinics the week before going to nationals with other clubs. They were doing clinics. They were already being recruited for the next year and they hadn't even gone to nationals yet. Wow. So the system itself is, you know, hey, and until you change the system, and I'm afraid that's a tough thing to do because, as you well know, it's called $, you know, sure. And now, you know, okay, in Dallas, there are over 53 facilities. When I came here, there were 2. Wow. Now there's 53. When I came here, there was 10 clubs. There's 150 some clubs. Wow. You know, and the majority of them don't use high school facilities in this area. Okay. However, in most other areas, they're using rec, right? Yep. They're using the elementary school. And guess what? If schools are closing down, now you've cut out all activity except what? Outside. Yeah. So now we go to grass volleyball. Now we go to beach volleyball. Now we go, if you're in another country, you're playing on dirt. When I was in Egypt, we were on the court outside in dirt.
Wow.
You know, and when I was in Korea, we were on asphalt in between two buildings where the net was tied up. So we have forgotten how good we have it as Americans.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, this wasn't the platform to talk about Americans, but I mean, I think we forget all the luxuries. Hey, when I went to college, I worked 20 hours a week. I played 5 sports. I graduated in 3.5 years. Not because I was smart, because I wanted to get out and coach when I was young. I was determined. Now, they got these kids that get scholarships. Well, we shouldn't have to do this. We shouldn't have to do. Well, give up your scholarship and go work 20 hours a week. See what it's like to graduate. No, you know what that's like.
Well, listen, you are an inspiration, and it has been terrific to get your feedback on what's going on. And you know, unfortunately, the reality is we just don't know yet what's going to happen. We're just kind of plowing forward, and hopefully the kids will be back on the court sometime this year.
Sooner than we think, right? Well, we're going to be optimistic.
Let's hope.
But I would just say, Pat, keep doing what you're doing, because when I saw the email, not even sure how I got the email, but I saw what you were doing, and I felt like it was a chance, especially women in coaching. I mean, more women should be coaching.
Yeah.
And if I can make a difference in that, and if some parent might see this and understand that they really do have to be the person that takes I call it the gatekeeper. Yeah. It's not your high school coach. It's not your club coach. Yep. It's you.
Yeah. Yep. Well, that's a great note to close on. And again, thank you so much for your time and sharing your wisdom, and best of luck to your kids. I hope they're back at it as very, very soon.
Thank you very much.
All right. Take care, Ruth.
Okay.
Bye-bye.